Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this Black History Month tribute to One Life to Live's Ellen Holly. I'm Alan Locher. Mariann Aalda, Jonelle Allen, Phil Morris, and James Reynolds are joining us today to pay tribute to this legendary actress who challenged racial barriers on daytime television in the 1960s. Ellen was one of the first Black actors to play a lead role on daytime television with her iconic portrayal of Carla Gray. Carla, who rejected her race and pretended to be white, became involved in a love triangle with a white doctor and a Black intern. The fact that the character of Carla was Black was not revealed to the audience until about 5 months after Ellen made her debut in the role. The revelation was a major shock to viewers. Ellen Holly remained with One Life to Live from 1968 through about 1985. As Mariann stated after Ellen's passing in December at the age of 92, the success of that story and the popularity with audiences opened doors for other Black actors to walk through. I was fortunate to be one of them, beginning with the fact that seeing her on One Life to Live made me believe that it would also someday be possible for me. Mariann originated the role of Dee Dee Bannister on The Edge of Night and is currently playing Violet Givens on The Bay. Jonelle portrayed Doreen Jackson on Generations. Phil Morris played Tyrone Jackson on The Young and the Restless. And James Reynolds currently portrays Abe Carver on Peacock's Days of Our Lives. Ellen herself has said that her 2 roles in daytime television are the 2 longest she ever held: Carla Gray and Judge Collier on Guiding Light. We will hear from this talented group of actors on how Ellen and the Carla Gray storyline paved the way for Black actors, for Black characters and actors to move from the background to the front burner storylines. We'll also hear their feelings on how Black representation has evolved over the past 6 decades. Before I bring them out, I'd like to share a passage from Agnes Nixon's memoir, My Life to Live, in the chapter dedicated to One Life to Live. She wrote, "I first pitched an idea that I had always planned to do on All My Children if it got on the air. It was a plot exposing the evils of the racial prejudice that had disturbed me during my childhood in the South. My mind raced back to the many times I had sat on a public bus as a little girl in Nashville and watched Black adults pass by me to stand in the crowded rear section, or when I heard someone I knew and others use derogatory words for Black people. Now I thought I could use some of those experiences and my angry feelings about them for this new show. Please help me welcome to the Locher Room Mariann Aalda, Jonelle Allen, Phil Morris, and James Reynolds." Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for doing this. This is really fabulous.
Well, my pleasure. I just want to let everybody know that Iona Morris, who played Jessica Griffin's sister Fiona on As the World Turns, apologizes that she could not be with us. She is currently filming a movie, and I'll share a video message from her later in the show. And I will also share a message from Lauren B. Martin, who played Camille Bennett on As the World Turns. Mariann, I wanted to start with you. Would you mind taking us back to, I believe, your college dorm room where your very first introduction to Ellen Holly was?
Yeah, I remember. I distinctly remember this. I can visualize. The scene in Booyer Hall on Thompson Point, Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, Illinois. I remember watching One Life to Live. And it's funny because I remember watching the soap and I remember Ellen's character. Now, it's funny. She was playing the character of Carla Gray. And at the time, we thought a white person. But there's something about, I don't care how light-skinned the Black person is, we kind of know each other. So there was something I thought was a little suspicious about her. I thought, this is kind of interesting. She looks like members of my family. And so when the shock came that she was actually, when she met Sadie Gray and it's like, Mama, it's like, Oh my God. And I think that was like on a Friday. You had to wait until Monday to find out what the story was. I remember like screaming in my dorm room, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then, of course, the story unfolded. And I remember thinking that there was a place for me in television, that there was an opportunity for me as an actor, that there were possibilities, because I'm Black, but I'm light-skinned Black, and it's like I just knew that there was a place for somebody who looked like me, that there would be an opportunity that I could be on television, and I wouldn't be discriminated against because he's not Black enough. Although I did get a lot of that when I was auditioning. But just seeing Ellen Holly there, I knew that if I kept going, there would be a place for me. And eventually there was.
Absolutely. I'd love to share one more excerpt, and this is from an interview Ellen Holly did herself in 2012 with We Love Soaps. She said in 1968, a very smart lady named Agnes Nixon figured out how she could take her little brand new half-hour soap and shoot it right into the national limelight. 3 years earlier, the 1965 Civil Rights Act had passed, and now Agnes figured out a way in 1968 to shoot through all of the tumultuous events of the times and garner total national attention by saying, I have just created the first Black star in a central role in the history of daytime television. It was fascinating from the beginning because the storyline was mesmerizing. It was so powerful, Ellen continued, that over the weekend after the reveal, everybody started talking about it. Not just the audience. Once it was revealed that I was Black, a lot of white women wrote me saying, what a cop-out. They were waiting for an interracial relationship, one in which the woman was white and the man was Black. So that's why they were angry that I was Black, Ellen laughed. Then there was a guy in Texas who had been angry when he thought I was white because I had kissed Peter. But after he found out I was Black, then he was mad that I had also been engaged to a white doctor. It was everywhere. It's one of the reasons I found the role so exciting to take on. I realized that a lot of people are prejudiced who don't know that they are. They really don't know it. And when they felt one way about me on a Friday and did a whole 180 turn on me on Monday, it was demonstrated to them that it had nothing to do with anything tangible. It was a very illuminating moment to me. Powerful, isn't it?
It's incredible. It's incredible that Agnes Nixon would have the foresight to put that out in the ethos when it was totally unacceptable. And the way that she layered it was, I mean, that's kind of genius. I had no idea about that backstory, and that Ellen would take such a lesson about humanity. What a social experiment to live through.
Totally. And I just, because I have Agnes's book, I had read it a few years after her death, and I went in there today to look, and I was really surprised at, Ellen has talked about it, and I was going to mention this later in the show, that it was an op-ed that Ellen Holly wrote in the New York Times, which is where Agnes found her. But the fact that it was through Agnes's own eyes of witnessing this horrible prejudice when she was a child, that she wanted to do something about it in her show. And like you said, Phil, at a time when no one was really tackling that
at all.
And Ellen, I think the important thing to remember was that this is the late 60s when I was in college. And, it's almost as though history is repeating itself. The same prejudices that we were facing then, it's like we have to remember those times and what we had to overcome, because we're experiencing we're going backwards in some ways, wanting to go back to when times were better. They weren't better for everyone. And almost as though there's something about human nature that wants to otherize, that wants to find something different about somebody. If it's not color, it's gender, or it's sexual orientation, or it's religion. And we are still putting people in boxes, and we've got to stop that, because it's killing people, literally. We haven't progressed as much as we think we have as human beings, as spiritual human beings.
That's why we need more Agnes
and,
Nixons.
And some people in power have made it, acceptable to hate in a big way in the last 10 years that I think we all haven't witnessed in a long time. But you are so right. We cannot forget what has led us here. Hopefully, so we learn from those mistakes. Jonelle, you told me. Can you talk about the impact of seeing Ellen Holly and Cicely Tyson on stage in Moon on a Rainbow Shawl, and how you view?
The thing is that, the thing is that, when Ellen Holly came out in the, as Carla Gray, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, she's black. She's black." Well, there are a whole bunch of us who already knew that. So that excitement about that, it was sort of like, okay. But the beauty of that storyline was there was actually a black woman playing the storyline, because the storyline was done before, sorry Agnes, in 1949 in the movie Pinky, starring Jean Crane and the great Ethel Waters. And it's the same thing, but Jean Crane played Pinky. They had a white actress playing the black woman passing for white, so I guess it would be all right for her to kiss Bill Lundigan. Anyway, but
Susan Kohner.
Pardon?
Imitation of Life with Susan Kohner. I mean, they've always done
Imitation. But it was first done with Freddie Washington in 1937, who was actually a very light-skinned black woman. But when they did the remake with Lana Turner and Juanita Moore, they had Susan Kohner, who was part Jewish and part Mexican. So anyway, but the thing with Ellen was, I first met her in 1962. And I met her through the great, if people are listening, I'm going to say Google. So the great director, Vinette Carroll. And Vinette Carroll did a play, and she starred in it. One of the stars in it in England. It was L. Earl John's Moon on a Rainbow Shawl. And in that particular cast was Cicely Tyson, James Earl Jones, and Vinette. Vinette brought it over to do it in the United States, and she directed it. And she starred in it along with Cicely Tyson, James Earl Jones, and Ellen Holly. And that was the first time I got to see Ellen Holly. And she was absolutely magical on stage. She was, the cast was amazing. Come on, James Earl Jones, Cicely Tyson, Vinette, they were all magnificent. But there was something so ethereal and otherworldly about Ellen Holly, and also the character that she was playing. And so that's when I first met her, and I was a teenager. I was about 13 or 14, and I met her, and she was like, but then a few years later, I was a member of Vinette Carroll's Urban Arts Corps in New York. That's where I'm from, Harlem. Hey, anyway, but we did. And so Vanette directed us in Moon on a Rainbow Shawl, and Maris Carter, lovely actress, played Vanette's role. I played Miss Mavis, which was Cicely Tyson's role, and Marie Thomas, a lovely actress, played the role that Ellen Holly played. And while we were doing the show, Ellen came to see us, and she said, "I'm passing the torch."
Wow. Hold on.
So to me, it's wonderful. It's wonderful that a larger audience on, got to see her and know her. And that's always wonderful. And that's the magic of television. But we in the theatrical community, the Black community, the, New York community, we knew her. We loved her. She's a great activist for civil rights. I mean, along with Harry Belafonte and Lord Harry, Lord Sidney, those people, I mean, they were boom. And she was amazing. And that's my Ellen Holly.
I'd like to bring out Mr. Reynolds. James Reynolds is here. I think I just saw him. So he is here. Maybe he stepped away for 1 second. So when he's back, I will bring him out. His camera's not on. Jonelle, though, you said 13, seeing Cicely and Ellen at 13. What impact did that have for you at such a young age?
Well, okay, I did my first professional show where I met Vanette Carroll. We did a show on Broadway. I was 8 years old, and we did a show. It was an unfinished play by Robert E. Sherwood called Small War on Murray Hill, directed by Garson Kanin. And that's when I first met Vanette. She was acting in the show. And I preface this because during that time, Vanette directed a show called Dark of the Moon. And Dark of the Moon is a show that is a play that takes place in Appalachia. But Vanette, with her West Indian roots and all of that, she put it in the West Indies. And the Ballad of Barbara Allen, and Cicely played Barbara Allen. Earl Hyman was her love interest. Roscoe Lee Brown was in it. Mel Stewart was in it. James Earl Jones' dad, Robert Earl Jones, was in it. And here I am, 9 years old, and they did the show at the 135th Street Y in Harlem. And I'm seeing these people up on the stage, and it was like, it was magnificent. So to me, yes, being a child actor and all of that stuff, but then and being on Broadway, but then seeing all of these people, rainbows of colors in this piece, I always knew it was possible. And when people would say things to me like whatever, I wouldn't listen to them. I wouldn't listen because if I had have listened to the garbage, I'd still, I'd probably be dead, but I'd be on, I wouldn't have gotten off at the park bench in Harlem across the street from my apartment where I grew up on Sugar Hill in Harlem, because seeing those kinds of images when you're a kid, it just opens up possibility. You're not knowing it, but somewhere within you're like saying, well, I saw that. So I can be that. I can be that. And sometimes I get like irritated when I hear, when people are going on in, what is this, 2024? In 2023, people go, Black women going on about wearing their hair. And I'm sorry. I was in the original production of Hair, that opened the Public Theater in New York. So it's like we were afros, mafros, bathros, lafros, hair down to here. That was about the show. Hair down to here, hair this short. It's like, really, are we really talking like that? Are we really there? Did we do this already? I'm tired.
Well, speaking of, examples, Phil,
And
your
I haven't even had espresso.
I'm still trying to get over bathrows. I'm sorry. Just give me a minute. No, go ahead,
Well,
Alan.
Phil, speaking of, seeing yourself up on screen, your dad, Greg Morris, was a pioneer, landing his role of Barney Collier on the hit primetime series Mission Impossible in 1966. What did you see him go through, and what do you think you learned from him about race at that time, sort of in the industry?
Well, it's a great question. I think that my sisters and I all feel very privileged that we were brought up in a household where the possible was possible. I mean, it wasn't just an idea. It wasn't just a concept. I mean, Jonelle saw it on the stage. I saw it at the breakfast table. I mean, that's the difference. It was ingrained in us that we mattered. It was ingrained in us that we could. What I saw my father do showed me, and it's a philosophy I live by, if no one could, no one would. And we all know that people do. We come from very difficult backgrounds and some abusive, financially, physically, sexually, whatever, and we make it through. So we can all do it. And in seeing that in my father and all that he went through, it wasn't easy. And to be honest with you, I was very young, so I never saw a lot of the warts. I mean, Mission Impossible started when I was 6. So, I mean, he was a #1 show guy from when I was 6 years old. So we didn't really experience the struggle with him, but we definitely knew about it because he had one of the most comprehensive African-American history libraries on the planet. And he made it our job and our challenge to learn our history and to learn how fortunate we were and how it was not normal, especially at that time, to exceed the way he was succeeding. And it was like Jonelle says, I never knew a time when it wasn't possible. I knew it was tough, but just because it was tough didn't mean it wasn't going to happen or that it couldn't happen. So that was really powerful to grow up like that. And I keep that strong to this day. I don't wear their prejudice on me. I don't wear their racism on me. And my father taught us that. It exists. So what you going to do? And that was really, again, powerful for a young man.
I'm sure. James, can you hear us?
I can.
Do you know how to turn on your camera?
I can hear you. What's that?
Do you know how to turn?
It's not. Very little seems to be working here at my little workstation today.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. I saw you for a second.
You can hear me. I just want to say hi to everybody.
Hey, buddy.
My sister Phyllis and Mariann and Jonelle. I haven't seen you in 30 years.
I know, since we were in bed together.
I know. That's the last time anybody saw us.
Generations. He had a heart attack. I just want to say one thing to Phil. And then, I met your dad and your mom. They came into New York and came and saw me on Broadway in Two Gentlemen of Verona with Percy Rodriguez, because I was doing a film, Come Back Charleston Blue, with Percy, and he brought them to the show. And we went out after the show, and your dad said to me, "You understand how important what you are doing. You understand." And he looked at me. I mean, it was like laser. He said, "You understand this. So you carry that, and you carry it, and you carry it well, and you do us proud." And your mom was like, "Yes." She was like,
She's co-signing.
Yes.
Mhm.
I just really wanted to just tell you that if I never see you again.
Thank
So
you.
there.
Phil, give me a second. I want to check your mic.
Oh, you're talking to me? Yes, I think it's on.
No. I hear you, James. I hear you
Perfectly.
perfectly.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you for being here.
Well, my apologies. I'm in a sort of black hole of nothingness here.
So, were you familiar with Ellen yourself, Ellen Holly?
No, only by reputation. My early days as an actor, of course, she was talked about in our family. Gosh, I'm so sorry I missed the beginning of the show, because when I heard Phil speaking, I thought there's some good stuff being talked about here, and then sadly I missed part of it. But yeah, it was common conversation in Black families and Black neighborhoods. There weren't many folks on TV, period. And daytime TV has always been something that's been staple of Black households. And so when Ellen was on, there was a lot of conversation all the time.
All the time. I love that. And you joined Days of Our Lives as Abe in 1981, and now we're one of the longest running African American characters in soap operas. What was it like when you arrived in Salem? Did they write for you? Did they write for Abe?
Yeah.
Have you seen it evolve?
Oh, it's evolved a great deal, a number of times over. But no, they wrote. I mean, that's the idea of bringing on a new character. And in this case, they brought on. There were several characters that would end up being staples of the show. And the first thing I remember is getting 6 scripts delivered to my house that I had to know at least one by Monday and another by Tuesday, and all the way through the week. So they wrote a great deal in the beginning, and this character was quite important. But it's gone up and down. There have been moments in which the character flourished, and there were moments in which the character languished.
Absolutely. Well, we will come back to Generations in just a moment, but I wanted to play a message from Phil's sister, Iona Morris, for everybody.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Iona Morris. I am now known as Iona Morris Jackson, and I'm shooting a film titled Michael, a biopic about Michael Jackson. Antoine Fuqua is the director, Graham King is the producer, and I can't show you where I am, so that's why I'm in a secret place. I kind of got this background behind me. But I wanted to at least send you a video and let you know how much Ellen Holly meant to me and my career. I know that I couldn't have done what I did on As the World Turns and General Hospital without her first paving the way. We're all paving the way for someone coming behind us. We all are. And the gift that she gave with her talent, her feistiness, her truth about who she is and what she demanded in her career is what has helped spur my career forward. And I am so grateful to her. And I'm so grateful to all of the guests who are going to be on this show today, The Locher Room, with Alan Wonderful Walker. I hope you enjoy it. I'm actually sure you will. I'm sorry to miss you all. Again, I'm grateful to the wonderful spirit of Ellen Holly. Have a beautiful day, everyone. And remember to thank those who've come before you, because those are the shoes you walk in.
What a message. What a message. I love it.
Spot on.
Alan, I want to say something about what Iona just said, and something that Jonelle brought up and that Phil brought up, because Phil said that he was able to see what was possible at his breakfast table. Just said that she was able to see what was possible because she grew up in Harlem and she had exposure to theater. The importance of television is that not everyone is fortunate enough to have that kind of exposure. And the only exposure I can remember as a child, I grew up in the Midwest. I didn't grow up on the coast. I was in the Midwest. And I can remember as a child outside playing, my mother would come to the door and say, "Colored person on Price is Right." And, you know, the household because we could think a Black person on television. It was in the 50s and the 60s. This wasn't that long ago. This was in my lifetime. And so this is not ancient history. This is history, like I said, in my lifetime. And this is really important because not everyone gets this exposure. And that's why it is important, because if we cannot see it, we do not know what is possible. So we have to see it someplace. We have to see it so we can believe it.
100% representation matters. You and I spoke on the phone, Mariann. You know, I'm gay and Jewish, and I, you know, sort of came out in the 80s where there was really no one on television that I, you know, that said they were gay. So there was nothing to relate to, really. That, you know, and that's, you know, the fact that Ellen was on TV in 1968 is amazing. That Greg was on Mission Impossible on a hit primetime series is incredible. That representation matters to little kids growing up. James, for you, where did you see representation for the first time?
You know, I think Mariann is so right on there, because I grew up in a town of 800 people in the Midwest. And so I could only dream of Broadway. You dreamt of things that you read about or you saw on TV. Two things I happen to love. I watched a lot of TV and read a lot of books. And that built the dream in which my life has been built on. And I think that's so important. And representation is also very, very important. You know, as in our family, there were 3 generations that was living in a pretty small house, and in those days, you only had three channels anyway. So deciding what to watch, it wasn't about who controlled the remote, because there wasn't one. You watched pretty much what was the most popular. You know, Ed Sullivan being Sunday night, and then you go to school the next morning. But it was so important to me and so many other young kids who didn't have the advantage. I mean, to me, Harlem was a dream that I read about, a dream that meant a lot in my history. I read a lot about Langston Hughes, who actually came from Topeka, Kansas, which was a little bit up the road from me, and what he did when he went to Harlem and the big cities. That's what television did. It allowed us to personalize our dreams. It allowed us to put a location on our dreams. It allowed us to point to specific people that were living in the world that we wanted to live in. And you know, I think Mariann got it just right. It's a big country, and to see the influence of Los Angeles and New York, wherever else you are, television becomes very, very important.
I love that.
But
Phil, I wanted to hear from Phil about The Young and the Restless. You know, you played Tyrone Jackson in 1984. I also think I read that Tyrone had to wear makeup to pretend to be white. Was that part of your storyline?
It was. And just to cap off what James and Mariann are saying, it extends our reach. It extends our reach past wherever you are. Kansas, Montana, wherever you grow up, wherever you happen to be. Reading, television, film allows us to take what you physically realize take. It allows you to extend your reach. It extends your experience. So yeah, that's the magic of those things as well. You know, Tyrone Jackson started in a phone booth in New York and ended up in Genoa City, 33 pages a day at the end of my stint. So it was a long journey. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why they chose to make me go undercover as a white cat. I had done some undercover stuff prior to that on the show, and then Bill Bell and Lee Phillip Bell and their Infinite Wisdom thought, well, they'll never see this coming, and no one really did. I mean, it was unique. It was a challenge. It was difficult at times because the sense of it didn't really land on me as much as I would like it to have. There was no overarching reason for it other than to fool the mob boss in Genoa City. And so there was no social underpinning. And so I found it to be a bit hollow, even at that time. And they won Best Show, Best Writing, Best Makeup, Best this, Best that. I didn't get one nomination for my performance. So that'll tell you something a little bit. So as you can hear, it was a good, bad thing for me. It was a double-edged sword, as a lot of these storylines in daytime can be. Jimmy said it, and sometimes he flourished and sometimes he languished. That's the nature of the medium. But I mean, I don't know what it did to further anything, quite frankly. All I know is that I had an opportunity to play in a sandbox that not many of us were playing in, at a level not many of us were playing at. My character and Stephanie Williams were on the cover of TV Guide with Bo and Hope, I guess it was, on Days of Our Lives, and some other people from General Hospital. So we made the cover of TV Guide, and we made a lot of noise, and we got our image out there. And I think that's always important, in a way that then afterwards, then Christoph St. John came on, and Shamar Moore came on, and so for me, it kind of showed that a young leading man could star in his own storyline. A young leading African-American male could star in his own storyline in daytime. And there were only a couple of people doing it. I think there was Jesse on One Life to Live. And there weren't many. There were some females who were holding their own, but not many males. So I had a chance to do that in Young and the Restless. And so I'm thankful for that.
Absolutely. I'm not sure. Would you mind trying to unplug your headphones? That might be giving us some feedback. I apologize. Yeah. I'm not. You need to unmute your mic now. See if that works. Can you unmute your microphone? Put them back in. Sorry, everybody. Jonelle and James, Generations comes around. The first soap opera to feature an African American family from its inception in 1989. Can you talk about the power of that and what you thought about it, being part of that show?
Well, I think that what I liked about Generations was that prior to that, you had more tokenism. You knew that this character eventually who was of color, is gonna get with that character of color, and they may have ancillary or family members or whatever. Sometimes you'd see, or so there was to me there always seemed to be this we had to be good. It was like being good, and that's fine. That's okay. But when Generations came along, there was we could be bad. We could, we didn't necessarily have to be one way. And also the thing is that the storylines, in fact, someone wanted to talk about, the cat fight that Vivica and I did, but the stories were integrated. There were people who were, overlapping with other people. So it wasn't like, oh, this is a Black storyline, or this is a white storyline, or this is, it was just a storyline. But at the time, I didn't know, what Generations did for me, and I say this in all honesty, was it gave me such a great respect for people who do daytime television. Because prior to that, I was like, well, okay, but I mean, there is an art to it. There is a craft to it. There is, you're working hard, and you've got to bring it. And for that, my respect for the daytime, because I'd only done, primetime series. My respect for people who do daytime was amazing. And, and I just respect that genre so much. And that's what Generations did for me. And also what Generations did, and there may be some who will disagree. Oh, well, what Generations did was also told the other soap operas that we could lead storylines. I mean, when Generations ended, which I think it ended personally because it came on in the second half hour of the most popular daytime of Y&R. I mean, so we were going in sort of like whatever, but we did build up an audience. However, after it went off the air, they picked up Christoph and put him into a big storyline in Y&R. So I think that Generations helped to show that we could have storylines. And the kind of storylines that Generations came up with begat an empire, begat a to have and have not, begat a lot of other shows that and I'll stand by that. And I'll just say one other thing, and then I won't say anything else again, I don't think. Growing up in New York, and I'm hearing when people are saying, in other areas that you grew up. But for me, yes, I've had exposure to theater and those things. But my greatest gift that I ever got was as a little Black girl going to the library on 135th Street, which was then called the Schomburg Collection, and reading about Black inventors, Black explorers, people who built Black architects, those of us who built nations. That to me was much, I knew we could sing and dance because I was doing that, but I didn't know that we were mathematicians, that we were so many things. And the Schomburg Collection, which has now become the Schomburg Institute, with the greatest collection of African-American history on this planet, as a little Black girl in Harlem finding that library, I felt as if I were going into Aladdin's cave. So for me, what has helped is also reading books, because sometimes people are getting their history from television and from movies. Hello, Gone with the Wind. And no. Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
That's great. James, I'd love to hear your take on Generations and the impact you think it had. But thank you, Jonelle, because that is, I think education is one of the largest problems in this country. So thank you for
something that they want to ban books, isn't
correct.
it?
Yeah. Correct.
Hello.
Right.
Exactly.
No, absolutely.
All right, Jim.
But Jonelle, what she said was absolutely correct. I think Generations is kind of the genesis of a new awakening that had to happen somewhere along the line from those in power, understanding that putting people of color in these positions, you create an entirely different view of an old genre. And you already, the audience was already there because we didn't have anything else to watch. So Black audience was watching daytime television loyally for many, many, many decades before Generations came along. And you're absolutely also right about Generations failing largely because it was the second half hour of the most popular show on daytime TV. You're set up to fail. You're set up to fail. And it's really, really unfortunate. You know, I appreciate, Jonelle knows this very well, I appreciate Brandon Tartikoff being part of our final scene in the motel room to show his loyalty, but the show is over. So
Absolutely.
What he did, it was going to be too little, too late. And but to show that the world as it is, and to show the world where there were a large number of people of color, a predominant number, gave at least some early producers who were probably only in their 20s and 30s at that point, but gave them the idea to be where we are now, which is still struggling and still looking up, but with major characters of color now on all the 4 remaining shows. Very important characters on all 4 remaining shows. And that's something, to be honest, in 1989, 90, 91, when Generations was going on, we couldn't see it happening. We were eventually, no matter how well we would start, we would eventually be tugged to the background for a certain amount of time until a new writer came along and decided, oh, well, wait a minute, we've got a little hidden gem here. Let's go with this for a while. So the cycle would replay. But Generations had a great responsibility for changing the mindset of those who are creating daytime TV.
Absolutely. Well, Mariann, I mean, you were cast as Dee Dee Bannister in 1981 when, you know, and still one of the very few African-American heroines in daytime. Were you, did you feel that you were aware of that at the time? And what was your experience like on Edge?
Oh yeah, I was very, very much aware of that at the time. Because first of all, every actress in New York auditioned for that role. And I can remember at one point during my lunch hour, I had an audition I had a commercial audition. And I came in and there were actresses who were in front of me and I had a limited amount of time. And I came in and there were 4 actresses who were going to go in front of me. And the casting director came out and I said, you know, I have a time problem. And the casting director said, well, you know, there are all these actresses in front of you. And Liz Van Dyke said to the casting director, excuse me, do you know who she is? She let her go. And all of these other actresses said, she must go because, you know, it was very important to them. Oh, I'm getting a little emotional now. It was very important to them that I get the respect because I was representing for all of them. You know what I mean? And that was meaningful to me. And I think I mentioned to you, I can remember on Sundays I would go to chat at Lincoln Center, either Avery or Alice Tully Hall. I would go to Unity, Science of the Mind. There was a little coffee shop across the street on 78th Street. And I can remember going there one Sunday. It was like a little narrow coffee shop. You walk in. I remember there was an older Black woman, probably the age I am now, in the back of the coffee shop. We were the only two Black people in a coffee shop. And you know, when Black people see each other, they kind of nod. She nodded, I nodded. I sat down, and when she exited, I was sitting facing the door, so she had to come around and turn around to face me. She came from the background, she turned around, she cupped my chin in her hand, and she said, "Oh, baby, it's so good to see you on that show." You know, like my mother said, there's a colored person on The Price is Right. It was really important to this woman who was probably maybe in her 70s at the time to see me playing a lawyer on this show in 1981. It was really important. So I was given awards by churches. You know, they just wanted me to. There were so many people who were celebrating me just because I was there, and so I was very, very much aware of the fact. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Earl Hyman. Earl Hyman came on the show, and he was playing was a courtroom scene, and Earl Hyman came up to me and he said to me, "It's nice to be able to pass the baton." There is something about, we all know when we are fortunate enough to be in that position that we have a responsibility to pass the baton to the next one, to the next one. And there is just, because there weren't that many of us who had that opportunity in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. There's a lot more opportunities now, and it seems like some of those opportunities are starting to close off, but there's a lot more platforms. So I don't think that that's going to be able to happen, but it really, really is important. And now it's like the way I felt about people in the 80s, now I feel about old people. I want to change the paradigm of older people on television because we're not seeing enough older female representation that is non-stereotypical. So it's like, you know, you can't take off your shoes for a minute because you got to keep on walking. It's always a job to do.
You know, going back to Ellen for a minute, Ellen sat down many years later with the Television Academy for their foundation interviews, and talked. You know, I think she.
I don't know. Wait a second. You know what? I have my phone turned off, but it doesn't make any difference.
I'm going to mute her for just 1 second while her phone rings. Ellen felt that her front burner story burnt to the ground. She recounted that her two gorgeous co-stars were let go. A station in Austin, Texas took One Life to Live off the air. And many years later, an executive producer, Paul Rausch, came in and wanted Ellen to change her voice. I think she definitely felt race played a part in her diminished storyline and the storyline falling apart, and things that she felt she didn't really understand when she got the role. The head of the ABC network, I believe, is the one who called her, and she didn't even realize it was the head of ABC who called to offer her this part. And as you all know, Agnes Nixon found her from the op-ed that Ellen wrote in the newspaper about I forget the title. How black do you have to be? And I'm just curious, you know, over the years, where have you faced some of these same issues that Ellen felt? Are there places you have felt that along the way? And what have you done to change, you know, I guess the paradigm, or change that perspective?
So what exactly, Alan? I'm not sure the question. What specifically? What do you mean?
So like Ellen, she felt, race played a part in her diminished story and time at One Life to Live, even though she was there a very long time. But if you listen to her foundation interview, she definitely felt race played a huge part. And I'm just curious, with roles that you've all had or parts that you've had, have you felt, you came in on a high note and it went a different route than what you thought it was from the beginning?
Well, I think you have to look at the history of this country, and if you look at whether it's sports, whether it's the music industry, whether it's any form of entertainment industry, there has always been a disparity in it, because I think what Ellen talked about a lot was that she was not paid commensurately to what her co-stars were paid. I discovered that I was not paid the same that some of my co-stars were paid on Edge of Night, and it just happened in a casual conversation, and my fellow actor said, "Oops," because she did not realize. She was surprised that I was being paid so much less than she was. That she mentioned about like the money that she was making six figures, and I never got to six figures on Edge of Night. Okay, during my tenure there, and but we have to realize too that we were coming from. There was a mentality that we were lucky to get those jobs. It's like, it's like, you're lucky to be here. If you don't take this job, we'll replace you with another one. And that was kind of the mentality that it was. So it is starting to change because we're writing our own shows, we're doing our own things. People are owning their own intellectual property and bypassing the systems. So some of that is changing as we're owning our own studios. You're doing different things like that. But it's history. Things change. Things evolve. That is where we were at the time. It's changed gradually. It's not changing fast enough. Ellen was on that show for 17 years. She ended up having to work as a librarian. She was never able to own a home. She was never able to comfortably retire. She was working, till the end. That is not true for many of her white co-stars, and that is shameful.
To answer your question, for me, no, not that I can recall. No, Jonelle, please jump in. I do have something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is that, well, first of all, I wanted to say about Ellen Hawley that she was promised the role of Sarah Jane in Imitation of Life. She was told in the Lana Turner version, she was told she was going to play that role. In fact, they were set to do it. And then somebody came in and said no, and the role went to Susan Kohner. We were talking about that earlier. The thing is that, and it's not like I'm being Pollyanna, because I'm not, but I don't know if I've experienced certain things. I'm focused on doing the work. The thing for me that may have come up are things that are coded things that, there was a nighttime soap that I did called Behringer's, which was about a department store in New York and yada, yada, yada. And it was in fact, my character came on Behringer's before Diane Carroll came on Dynasty. So in essence, I was the first African-American woman to be a series regular on a primetime soap opera. But there was a scene where the three what do you call it? Roommates. One was going to be ambitious buyer, me. The other was a South American model, and the other was Leslie Ho played her sweet little character, you know, blue-eyed, bright-eyed, bushy tail. And there was a scene that we were going to have in our apartment. So South American model is like trying on clothes and talking about things and being very South American. Little blonde-eyed, you know, she's like sitting and praying that she gets a date with somebody. And then my character is in the kitchen cooking. I saw this in the script. And I went to the producer who was creator of the show, a wonderful woman named Diana Gould. That's another thing. I've been lucky enough to have 3 series that were produced by women, the showrunners. And that's a whole other different story, you know. But I went to them and I said, you know, I don't want to do that. Can I be balancing my checkbook? Can I be doing whatever? And blah, 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 blah. But I didn't go in with, why does the Black woman have to be cooking in the kitchen? Nope. I just went, you know, Stacey doesn't cook. You know, she really wants to be making money. So she's doing her checkbook thing. So they changed it. And so what happened was I heard from writers in the writer's room, when they would come in for a story, pitching stories, they said, do not put Jonelle in the kitchen. Do not put Jonelle in the kitchen. So, you know, that kind of thing. Or when I was doing Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and there's a scene where we're all riding off to Pikes Peak or whatever. Jane Seymour's wearing a cute little cowboy hat. Elaine Udi's wearing a cute little cowboy hat. Barbara Babcock's wearing a cute little cowboy hat. I go to costumes and they want me to wear a bandana around my head. And I was like, well, they're wearing cowboy. I don't know. I could get sunstroke too. Well, it turns out, you know, it was like the costume designer it didn't even dawn on her. So I wound up, because my husband is a blacksmith on the show and he wore a cap, I wore his little cap. But it's those kinds of things that, to me, that are sort of, it weren't even thinking really, you know, but as opposed to going in, which, you know, as opposed to going in like, wait a minute, you know, what? I was like, I don't know. What do you think?
I hear you. Phil, did you have something?
Just to wrap
so
it
it changed, you know, but sometimes that happened.
I don't know how long the show is, Alan, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but, you know, history is written by those in power. It's the way it is, the way the world is. The more power we have, the more history we will write. That's why things have changed, because we have gained more power. We have gained more creative control. We've gained more financial control, more financial freedom, more creative freedom. That's just the way the world works. And Mariann's right. The history of this country is manifest destiny and control. You know, whether it's us or indigenous peoples. So we have to know the enemy and fight it accordingly. Jonelle makes a great point. It's up to us to change perception, not up to us to fight it all the time. It's up to us to show by example how we are smarter than they think we are, how we are more capable than they think we are. And this last thing, for me, it's been the opposite. I have been able to lead by example. I have been able to be the different choice when they cast. I have had the benefit of those Ellens, those Greg Morrises, those Sydneys, those Harry. I live the benefit of that. And I work very hard to change perception even to this day. And I have been given many letters saying, thank you for your input in a father-son relationship for African Americans. That's my charge now. It is not to fall prey to their limitations, to extend their reach by my own enlightenment. And that's where we can take the power back.
Love that. Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
I do, actually. Several things, some that Jonelle was talking about, and of course, Phil and everyone, Mariann. Looking at where we are today, since I've kind of spanned the last 40 years or so, but looking at what was then, and somebody touched on it earlier, where almost every show had what they called the Black story. It wasn't part of the overall story. It was always the Black story. And that phrase, those two words, explain the journey that not only daytime TV, but all television, movies, theater have all gone through. We just had a very unfortunate incident, things going on with sexual harassment and some other issues. But the producer caught in that was the first and only Black producer in the history of daytime. Something that wouldn't have been thought of. Every show now has writers of color, not just only Black writers, but Hispanic and others. Would not have happened 10 years ago, let alone 20, 30 years ago. And as I mentioned earlier, the actors on the show, the actors of color now are primary actors for their shows. They are people, it's still only 3 or 4 people per show, but they are identifiable with that show. They're not somebody that came on for 6 months to advance story for other characters. They are actually actors that others come on for 6 months to advance their story. And I think those are important to remember where we were, where we are, and where we're going. And there's a lot of talent out there, and I'm glad that we're now scratching the surface of utilizing that talent. I've worked with actors of every ethnic stripe, and boy, there's some good people out there.
Yeah.
And it is so important to have diversity in the writers' room to speak to all types of our lives and cultural, backgrounds. But Jim, thinking back, I mean, you are the longest running African American on daytime, one of them. You must hear from, sort of young people of seeing you on Days of Our Lives for all these years that you have impacted and made a difference.
That's one of the great thrills of my life. I mean, that started many, many years ago, not too long after I began. And Mariann was talking about that and the impact she knew immediately what her impact of showing up on television was.
Yeah, somebody grabbed her face, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. That's the same year I showed up on this show. I had had some other nighttime series, but this is the first time I had been in daytime. Was 81, and it fills my soul to have these young people come up to me and talk to me about how my appearance meant so much to them and led them to stay in this profession and work hard at it. And I'm amazed at how many have succeeded. But we all need inspiration. And we've spoken about that earlier. When I was a child, there was very little inspiration. There was almost nobody that looked like me on television and in the film. I've got favorite TV shows. I don't know if there was ever a Black person on those shows. And I'm sure all of you have the same memories, because that's the way it was. And we have been fortunate now to be part of the change. And boy, when those young kids come up to me, young kids, or many are adults, but some are young kids, and talk about how meaningful my appearance on television was to them, I am, my heart just grows big. It just grows big.
I love that. Mariann, I think you were going to say something. I'll let you have the last word before I play Lauren B. Martin's tribute to Ellen.
Okay, it kind of wraps up everything that Jim and actually and Phil and Jonelle were saying. I think that's why it is so important that we do what it is that we do, and why we are blessed to be able to do what we do. Change is going to come. It's going to come through the storytellers. You cannot legislate change. You cannot legislate change of hearts. But the storytellers are the ones that touch hearts. The storytellers are the ones that touch hearts and minds and get people to see differently, walk in somebody else's shoes, to get a different kind of feeling and understanding. And it really is about, actors are shaman. We are fortunate to be part of the change. If change is going to come, it's going to come through the storytellers.
Correct. But, you are performing stories that people are writing, but you right now here with me are sharing your personal journeys. And that is how we all learn from each other to do better in this world. I thank all of you so much. You please stay here if you would like to hear Lauren. Lauren has a really beautiful tribute to Ellen. I really appreciate you all spending this hour with me.
Love you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll be with all of you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks
Well,
for
thank you
inviting
for allowing me
me.
to be part of
Thank
this
you.
today. I certainly idolized Miss Holly for many reasons, our similarities in our background and her absolute unwavering determination to educate people on really what it was like to be a mixed race woman in this industry. And she went to the lengths of even penning a letter, I believe it was to the New York Times, to speak about how difficult it was to be cast as a light-skinned woman of color. And I certainly know what that feels like. Many times in my life, I've used the platform to speak about and educate that there are many, many different shades and many textures of what color looks like, what color feels like, the essence of being ethnic. And, she said in an interview once that soap operas had a unique format to enable people to examine their prejudices in a way that no other format possibly could. And I truly believe that to be so. I certainly got that opportunity to do that. Peter Paros and I played a very, very big arc about prejudice and racism on As the World Turns. And we had a great format to really speak about that. But in many ways, I always tried to take a page out of her book. I stood in rooms where I got to say things about what it was like to have a very different, diverse background and how representation matters. And in our country today, we have millions of mixed race children that need to see a representation of themselves. And I hope that writers and casting directors will understand that it's not just the typical storyline of the forbidden fruit of mixed race couples, or the, tapping into the exoticism of not knowing exactly what someone is, but something about them is different. I think that we can play a bit more broad than that. And I certainly know Ms. Holly came from a long line of activists, as have I. I've spoken about my family, and many of you have read stories about that. And it's a continued conversation. It's not just in the month of Black History. It is every day. And even for some of us that do not appear to be of color, sometimes that racism is even a darker sword, because we are constantly having to sort of defend ourselves. And Miss Holly taught me a lot of lessons about how to navigate that through this industry. And for that, I'm grateful. And I'm grateful to be part of this today. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Mariann, for helping get this group together. James, pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad I finally made it.
Me too. Have a great afternoon, you two.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you, and nice seeing you again, James.
Yes, I have to come see you sometime.
Uh,
That'd be great.
Bye, everybody. Thank you to Lauren B. Martin, Mariann Aalda, Jonelle Allen, Iona Morris, Phil Morris, and James Reynolds for taking the time to have such an important conversation today and to honor One Life to Live's Ellen Holly. Please join me next Wednesday, February 28th, when actor Russell Todd stops by, and on Thursday, February 29th, Trevor St. John joins me to discuss his new film, A Good Enough Day. A Good Enough Day is out now, and I highly recommend you watch his new film. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so down below. You get reminders of all upcoming shows, and I hope if you liked today's episode, you click the like button. It does help. Also, you can search The Locker Room on your favorite streaming platform and download audio versions of my show. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Please stay safe and please continue to be kind to others.